If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think you're looking at who will be the greatest coach in New Orleans Saints history. Kellen Moore talks the Saints roster at the 2025 NFL Owners Meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, the head coach, the old ball coach, the head coach Kellen Moore of the New Orleans Saints gets to talk to the media, sits down, a round table, if you will. You can see in the back how it's all set up. So, Kellen, we're going to hear from him. When the coach speaks, I speak. And when I speak, the people listen. Author's note, I'm recording this at about 6 a.m. So if I sound tired, look tired, boom, me and the sun getting up at the same time to get you the content that you deserve. All right, let's go ahead and watch this. Listen, we'll break down. It's a longer video, so I'll try and not interrupt as much. But, I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's been great. Obviously, first time being down here. Good experience. Get to connect with a lot of people.
Hey, Kellen, what do you think about the moves you guys have been able to make so far in this offseason?
Yeah, I feel like you've done a nice job of adding real value to our team, and obviously it's the beginning process of the whole offseason where you're continuing to try and acquire guys throughout this whole process, and so I feel like we're heading in the right direction.
You had some additions, but there's also been a lot of retention, bringing guys back, everything. Was that kind of your understanding of how things would go when you were talking about the job, taking the job, all that, or is that?
Certainly, when you go through free agency, players have a choice, and I think that's an important aspect of free agency is they have a choice as well, and so we feel really excited that a number of guys really had a high desire to come back to New Orleans and be part of the team, be a part of the community, and so it was really cool to get to know those guys in a short period of time as they've gone through their process as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is underrated or an under-talked about aspect of free agency where the players do have a choice. And, you can think about your own jobs where if you hate your job and you got equal offers from 4 different employers, you'd probably go somewhere else, right? So it does say something for the Saints and for the locker room and for whatever, the coaching staff and the direction they're going when players do decide, I want to return. Now, some players, the market's not as big or whatever, but that rarely gets talked about, but I think it should get talked about more.
What was that process like for you, try to get to know everybody? I mean, you took the job after the Super Bowl, and then free agency was still like a month after that. What was that like? How'd you go about that?
Yeah, just trying to connect with anyone who may have questions as they go through this process. Obviously, there's a lot of relationships that will continue to build, especially when we start OTAs coming up in a couple weeks, and so it's a whole long
Can't
process.
wait.
How was it felt for you just working with this scouting staff and going on some of these trips and speaking their language, kind of so to speak, for the first time and just integrating and all that?
Been great. Jeff is a rock star. His ability to connect that scouting department, connect the coaches. We've done a ton of work over the last week and a half of just kind of teaming up on this scouting process as we've gone through this college cycle here. And so starting midweek this week, we'll start going through the readings of the draft prospects from a coach's perspective and kind of truly teaming up with the scouting department. And I'm really excited about that.
I keep hearing people say it's the same, like the same scouting department, the same draft strategy, the same GM, the same this, the same that. I cannot explain just how much it is not the same. When you hear Kellen Moore talk, you can tell he's seeing things from a different world. I'm sure Brandon Staley is in the same boat, and I'm sure all of Kellen Moore's assistants are all in the same boat. The questions that are being asked, the analytics and the data that's being evaluated, completely different with the draft process, the scouting process. I know there's some PTSD or some trauma or something, but the idea of I'm scared to draft blank player because we failed on blank player at this position in the past, we got to forget all that. I keep emphasizing this, but this is as big of a change a team can have in the NFL to have a completely new staff on both sides of the ball, the youngest staff in NFL history. I trust these guys. I really do. And I trust what they're doing scouting-wise. I trust the work they're putting in. There's not a doubt in my mind that Kellen Moore is working 20 hours a day to get this right.
Is there like a chemistry building process between viewing scouts and stocking the scouts?
Certainly there's a language thing that you're always just trying to connect each other, connect how everyone sees it, how everyone sees the evaluation process, how you see the players fit in your certain scheme, because obviously there's some transitions there, and so all conversations have been great.
How does the scouting department how is that impacted by a coaching change and a coaching staff change? Is that kind of handled separately, or is that part of something you're a part of as well?
As far as what they're looking for?
Personnel within that scouting department. Like, is that Jeff's thing where that's his team, or are you
certainly Jeff has done a phenomenal job building his staff and on that side of this.
Yeah, I mean, the way it works is Jeff's going to build the staff, but the coaches are going to kind of dictate what they're looking for or what to try and find.
It's a great group. I'm really, really excited to get to spend more time with them in the coming weeks.
How much, I guess, influence do you have in that, Colin? I mean, in terms of getting the guy that Kellen Moore likes and fits what he wants.
From
an Ireland standpoint, with that, that relationship.
Yeah, just if you're talking from a player's perspective, I think it's us just having continuous conversations. I was fortunate. I've spent a lot of time the last week and a half with Jeff, just kind of going through the pro day circuit, so to speak, and so we get to have a lot of conversations through that process. And quickly, Jeff was at Dallas at one point. I was at Dallas. Obviously, we didn't overlap, but just being in the same area at one point. There's a lot of overlap and a lot of discussions that we've had independently that kind of bring us together pretty quickly.
How do you kind of decide where you want to go for a pro day versus, because all the pro days are different days, they overlap? How have you kind of chosen to?
Yeah, Jeff really leads the way with that. There's a ton of work behind the scenes just to get.
By the way, I understand the audio's kind of scuffed. $1 billion organization can't get a microphone. What's going on?
The logistics right and get the opportunities to grab a dinner with a player, grab some meeting time in a classroom. There's a lot of work that group did, and they did an excellent job. It was really awesome.
Tell them, what's the advantage of getting a handful of guys from one school together at dinner and meeting them that way as opposed to just maybe like the one-on-one?
Question was, what's the advantage of getting a bunch of guys together from a school? I think at Texas there was like 5 different guys that went to dinner. So I would assume part of it is time. Like part of it is probably, well, you can't go to 6 individual dinners. So if you got the opportunity, you might as well get them together. I would assume efficiency plays a lot into that.
We obviously get to watch the film, so we have a good feel for what they have from a skill set perspective. I think it's really getting to know the person, really getting to know the dynamic. I was talking about how valuable the locker room is, how valuable that is, and you want to make sure you bring in the right type of guys that are going to fit the locker room and help that group.
I think it is good too, and this is just me, this is just based on nothing, but I think it is good too to see a bunch of guys together, to see the dynamic of like, okay, who is the alpha, whose personality does this, how do they interact together, how do other people see this guy. You can kind of tell when you're in a group setting. If you're isolated with someone, it's much easier to fall for whatever, right? But if you're in a group setting, a lot of the times quirks and personality deficiencies can come out much more, and a lot of those like subliminal things can come out. So I think there is just a like psychological advantage to getting these guys in group settings, especially if one of them is a quarterback, because you do assume like, okay, if this guy's been the quarterback for a couple of seasons with these guys and we believe he's the leader, we believe he's the alpha, you probably want to see that in a group setting.
So is it like more natural when you kind of get a couple of them together? You see like more of the real personality as opposed to the button side?
Anytime the guys get to spend time with their former teammates, current teammates, whatever you want to call it, you get a little bit more of the traditional person. It's not a job interview where they're sitting around with a handful of older folks that are quizzing them and testing them.
A couple of places you've been, at least you've seen pictures of you and such at pro days. A lot of quarterbacks have been there. What do you look for, kind of just in a young quarterback coming out of college, given your experience on the position and all that?
What I think's happened with the audio is I think they have cranked up the noise reduction from the background area, whatever, and I think that has made it to where the reporters sound like they're underwater, and it's created that like staticky haze. So I think if just a quick guess, I would assume they've cranked up the noise removal, but also cranked up the gain or whatever on Kellen's mic to get him, but it's forced the static and it's forced that underwater sound.
Yeah, the quarterback position obviously is a valuable position in our league. We all know that. So I'm a quarterback guy. I do like seeing quarterbacks. We had, as we went through our process, there were a couple as we went through the stops. And so, when you're going through those guys, you watch a lot of film on quarterbacks naturally, because you're watching both sides of the ball now. And you look for the skill set that they need. They got to reach a certain threshold, but then really understanding the person and understanding the classroom aspect of it is huge. And so you spend as much time with these guys as you can.
How much do you have to account for Derek's getting older? Just planning for the future along with.
I think every team in the NFL is always trying to bring in quarterbacks and develop them under any circumstances. So everyone does homework every year on quarterbacks. It's a very valuable position, and so obviously we feel like we have Derek, who's played a ton of football, and we feel great about, and then we have certainly our organization has invested in quarterbacks the last few years with Spencer, Jake, and then Ben, and so we got a number of guys that we're excited to develop as well.
When it comes to just touched on it, but what's the value of taking swings year after year in that position?
Yeah, I think anytime you can add value to the room, I think is important because it is a developmental position. The age of the quarterbacks peaking is usually a little later. Those guys take a little bit longer. They have longer careers than other positions, and so these guys sometimes take a little bit of time. You got to have patience and ability to spend time with those guys and develop them in a consistent system.
Quarterback's weird. Quarterback really is a weird position because it behooves a team to keep swinging at a franchise quarterback until they have one. That's how important the position is. If you have an average to above average quarterback, it really doesn't matter. It can keep you steady, right? It can keep you in the game. But if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, if you're trying to, be one of the elite teams in the NFL, you got to have that MVP level quarterback. It's just, unless your roster is so good, unless the rest of your team is just so insane that they can carry mediocre play or average play from a quarterback, you almost have to keep taking swings. Even if you have an above average quarterback, even if you have somebody who it's okay, yeah, we feel good and comfortable with this guy. If you have a chance at a franchise quarterback, you kind of have to take him. It is such an important position, and that's not to say that other positions aren't important. Like I said, you can get by with an above average quarterback if the rest of your roster is that damn good. But if you believe, hey, we can get a franchise guy in here, a transcendent guy, let's rock and roll. The problem with a lot of the Saints picks is that they aren't those guys. They don't physically match the elite quarterbacks. Nothing about Garrett Grayson, Ian Book, Jake Haener, nothing about those guys screamed franchise quarterback. They screamed maybe serviceable, but certainly not a franchise MVP level player. And Spencer Rattler was the only guy that fit the profile physically of, well, he does have some physical traits that maybe can, catapult him to that upper tier. Just the physical traits. I'm not saying he could or would or what or was what, whatever, but just his arm talent, just stuff like that. That was a separator compared to Ian Book or Jake Haener or any of those guys. So, yeah, if you have a chance at one, I think you do have to take them until you have a franchise quarterback.
You mentioned the quarterback room as it's constructed now. Assuming that no other quarterbacks are added, how would you go about sort of determining the backup quarterback role behind Derek Carr with the young guys you've been?
Yeah, just go through a full offseason process. Obviously, give all those guys opportunities. We'll have plenty of opportunities through OTAs, through training camp, through preseason football. Those guys will get plenty of chances.
And would your goal to be to have that backup solidified before the season began, or to even take that competition into the season?
In almost every circumstance, you want to have it defined going into the season. You got to know who your backup quarterback is and just understand there's a progression there. And not gonna say never ever, but feel like it's pretty strong just because of the reps in season. You have to have it set in a certain way. Really, the third guy in a regular season only gets so many reps. It's hard to have 3 guys platooning in that situation. How's it going?
Weird. 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Was this guy on the roof?
Yep.
What conversations do you have? What do you
Yeah, obviously the player from
No
our
idea.
perspective, Chris is a
No
phenomenal
clue.
player. Phenomenal player, has had a huge impact on this team. He's going to have a huge impact from a medical side. On my side, it's just education and understanding the circumstances he is in. Obviously, we feel very comfortable with Chris. Understand he's been through a lot
Chris
in the
Olave?
last year or two, and so we feel like there's a plan in place to continue to let him progress. And certainly, I get the feeling that he's really, really excited about this opportunity.
This might be a different question, but if memory serves, you were still in charge of the job at the
That was my first year, yep.
Yeah. Do you remember some of that? Like, is that getting back in your head a little bit?
I don't remember as much just because that was my rookie year.
Yeah.
And he ended up not, it was really just that first offseason, and then it ended up not working out.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that
Yeah.
triggered it.
Yeah.
What do you guys, Brandin Cooks, how do you see his fit with the other receivers?
All right, they just asked about Brandin Cooks.
Yeah, I had never met Brandin. Our circles are very close. Him being a Northwest guy, playing at Oregon State, and then obviously going to Dallas at one point as well. Phenomenal leader, phenomenal player. I think that combination is very valuable for us. He can still run, he can still play. He had kind of an unfortunate season last year just with the injuries and the setbacks with relation to that. So his targets and catches and stuff were down. If he plays a full season, they probably look a really heck of a lot different. And so we feel like he's still got the player in him, and the leader that he's going to be will be hugely valuable just for our entire team.
Is there a body type there that you guys would like, or can you get it done with 3 guys that are all kind of?
Yeah.
So Nick asked, is there a body type that you want? So obviously, people have talked a lot about the Saints all kind of have the same receiver. They all have the 6 foot, 180 pound, 6 foot's generous, 180 pound receiver. And everyone keeps saying we need a big body, physical receiver. So that's what we're talking about here.
There's flexibility within that. Obviously, hey, anybody in a perfect world wants to have a basketball team with some tall, some short, some quick, some big. We're flexible. We're flexible, and certainly the people part of it is really, really valuable to us, and we feel like we brought in an excellent player in person in Brandin.
I think there is something obviously to the basketball team thing where you have like a little bit of everything, but I think at a certain point it does become overrated. Like, it's more important that you get good receivers than body types. And I've said this before, but I think that Juwan Johnson could potentially play a role as the big body type receiver. It is way more important to get good players than just check boxes of 6'4", 6'5", whatever. And the same goes with the draft. I don't want to pass on. I wouldn't want to pass on Matthew Golden because I'm like, well, he's not really the physical. He doesn't really fit what we want to go get a C- 6'4" guy, right? Like, give me a roster full of Cooper Kupps and I'll figure it out, right? Like, I don't have to have the David Bostons.
How much was kind of adding more?
That's a deep pull.
To that core also a part of that equation of bringing Brandin Cooks in?
Well, that's certainly what you're bringing when you bring Brandin in. We do feel like we have some size behind him. We have some speed still behind him and some younger guys that we're excited to continue to develop. But, you're looking for certain people that fit your locker room who still can play at a really high level. We feel like we hit both of those with Brandin.
And where does, I don't know how much exposure you've had with him yet, but what means, of course, who they invested in last year in the draft, just your first impressions of him?
Yeah, feel great with the direction he's going. Obviously, I haven't been on the field or in the classroom with him yet, but small interactions, great. The film, you're excited about the prospect that he is.
How comfortable kind of for Juwan?
Yeah. Obviously, we're really, really excited to team up with him again. I think that was one of those ones that we talk about, like free agencies, they have a choice, and so we were really excited that he chose us to come back, to be back in the city of New Orleans. That's a huge aspect to us, and so he's He's been a really good player in this league. We're excited with where he can go. Certainly his ability with the ball in his hands is critical. It's very valuable. His ability to play in the second and third level, a little deeper passing game concepts with the tight ends.
Yeah, they're talking about Juwan here.
Not all the guys can stretch the field that much vertically, and we feel like he can. And so, I think some of the stuff we've done in the past with these tight ends that we've had in some other stops, we feel like we can add to his game.
You mentioned the late night.
How comfortable do you feel with your running back? You have a known commodity in Alvin, but a decent amount of unknown behind him.
It's how every offseason usually goes. You have a really, really good player in Alvin, and so we got some guys that we're excited to continue to develop. And so, long process as you go through this. I'm sure there'll be other guys added, draft, free agency, undrafted free agents. There's a lot of different opportunities to add guys there, and so we'll just kind of let it play out. But we feel good.
And that answer tells you right there, they understand they need to add at the running back position. Like, he's mentioning the draft, he's mentioning all this stuff. Like, right there, your ears should perk up and say, okay, they are looking at adding a running back at some point here. And you would think the draft is the key area where they want to add.
That we got some guys that we are continuing to develop.
Juwan had mentioned a late night phone call to you being a really important part of his decision to return to New Orleans. Is that just kind of the type of coach that you want to be?
I think every player is going to go through a different process, and so certainly I understand his side of it. He's going through a process where he's deciding whether to come back to a place that has a new coaching staff. And so just having those questions, understanding what the situation is going to look like, what the situation is going to present himself, it's going to look different than what he was a part of in 2024. And so, those conversations were valuable to him, which I think was a great thing for us.
Do you remember what you were doing when he called?
I think I was starting to pack our house.
And that's something else too. Like, when you're in a vacuum, I would say, yeah, I thought the Juwan Johnson signing was. I didn't like it. I think it was expensive. But if Kellen Moore is telling me, like, no, we have a plan. Like, no, we have a plan for Juwan. We think he can do this. You do have to kind of trust. You do have to kind of trust that, right? Like, I'm looking at Juwan through the lens of what he's done the last couple of years. Like what I've seen him do. But if Kellen is sitting here going like, we think we can do something unique with him that we've done with, tight ends at other stops, and he fits the mold of what we would like. Like, okay, I'm willing to give him that to see how he utilizes Juwan. And Juwan is a hybrid player. He is a unique tight end. So, yeah, I hope I'd be thrilled. Obviously, Dallas Goedert is like the easy comparison because Kellen just came off of a year with Dallas Goedert. But if he is that, go with me.
I was just curious about your process in that. Are you the type of coach where if you see a player's name, you're answering the phone no matter what it is that you're doing? How important was that for you, just like it was for him?
No, hugely important. I think understanding, putting yourself in the player's shoes, those are critical, life-changing decisions. They're really, really hard decisions.
Yeah.
Coaches go through it. When you go through transitions, players go through it. You sympathize with that. You just want to give them the information that they need to make the best decision for them and their family.
You mentioned the offensive line back at the combine. I was wondering about Fuaga just switching to left tackle. Do you guys still see him as a left tackle, or how do you?
Yeah, we see him as left tackle. I mean, he can play anywhere. I mean, he's a big-time player.
Yeah, I think Talise Fuaga is a left tackle. He is, okay, you're good, right? They moved him from right to left. He did well at left. He had a solid rookie year. Why would a team, unless someone else falls into your lap, but this draft isn't really like that. Will Campbell's not not true left tackle. So I think at this point you say we're good at left tackle and moving forward. We've got our cornerstone left tackle guy in Talise Fuaga, and you move on.
And similarly with Trevor Penning, I know you've made that transition from left to right last year's right tackle, still a spot that you.
Yeah, we got him there. Yeah, we feel good. Continue to develop.
All right, there you go. So Kellen's cool with the tackle spots. Kellen's cool with Trevor at right tackle. I know there's always conversations of moving Trevor to guard. So he's cool with Fuaga at left tackle, cool with Trevor at right tackle. As far as their positions, I mean, I'm not saying that they won't draft a right tackle, but there is no talk of moving either around.
Do you feel with the draft on the way here very shortly, scarily shortly, But do you feel that there's more to be done on the roster in free agency before you get to the draft? Do you feel like you're in a place where you can walk into the draft today and feel pretty good about it?
Certainly, if something presents itself, we won't hesitate. It's again, the whole offseason is a long process of player acquisitions. Sometimes everyone jumps the gun early and thinks this is how our roster is going to look. It's going to look different as we continue to go through this. And so we feel like we're heading in. I think most of the league is heading into a phase where you're focused on the draft. But one or two items will come up, and you'll talk about them and have discussions about them.
Yeah, I think right now is draft. Like I think like Amari Cooper keeps getting talked about, but it's like, well, it's probably better to try and get whatever you need in the draft and then see like what you did not get and then supplement in free agent. So I think, especially with like pro days and all this travel and all the interviews or whatever, I think now it's just draft time. You get it in the draft and then you see what happens after that.
What's your take on the push coach and banning it or not banning it?
Yeah, obviously I'm very comfortable with the play. There's no injury data. Percentage-wise, the likelihood of converting on it's pretty much the same as any other one. I don't see any issues.
What do you think I know the Green Bay said pace of play and they said player safety, but as you mentioned, the injury data is not actually there. It's kind of all hypothetical and what could happen.
Yeah.
What do you think is there another reason for this proposal due to?
Yeah, I mean, obviously most of it's subjective. Obviously factual stuff is pretty consistent, so obviously I feel very comfortable with the league keeping it.
How will you feel if you are the last person who have called that? You're going to go down and
give credit to Jalen and all those guys for creating a play that someone decided they're just going to make a rule up to stop it.
Do you think as it's written right now, I know there's kind of a lot of gray area with what immediately at the snap means, because you line up in that I formation and the push comes after that, that might still be allowed with the way that it's written now.
Yeah, I guess, we'll let them wait for a second and then push them. The defense can push as it's written right now, so it's not like the defense can't push as well, so,
Is it something that you want to spin off variations of it if it doesn't pass today, like for next season?
Certainly it's been a really good play. Obviously, I do think personnel has something to do with it. Obviously, other teams have tried it and haven't had as much success. Jalen, the offensive line of Philly, they've been committed to it, and so it's an investment thing.
Yeah.
I feel like you have the personnel.
I guarantee you, if we have the personnel, Kellen will be running that on short yardage in New Orleans. You have a play that is that good at such a critical part of the game, I guarantee that will be part of the New Orleans Saints playbook if we have the personnel.
Try it or do it?
I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, I think other teams have tried to replicate it and have not.
Like, you're not doing it with Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara, but if, we'll see with the draft and all that, but I would not be surprised at all if we see that in New Orleans.
Had success. I think investment is, Nick's done a phenomenal job. It's a huge investment to execute that play at a really high level, and they put a lot of time and effort into it.
Did he need to lobby you at all, or were you like, I'm on your side, man?
I got Nick. Yeah, we're good.
Thank you.
Kellen, all of this is necessary, obviously, as a first-time head coach, all the league meetings and combine and all that stuff, new position. I guess how anxious are you to get your players on the field and actually
Good question.
get into what you want to get into?
I would think that's he's dying to get to that part. It's kind of hard, honestly. If you think about the job, it's got to be very difficult to become a new head coach, but you can't really know anything about the decisions you're making. You haven't got these guys on the field. You haven't seen the locker room. You haven't seen how they interact. You haven't seen them play. You've seen everything through tape and through the lens of something else. And even looking at tape last year, there's so much context. So you have to make these huge decisions like free agency and the draft and plan all this stuff. But until you actually get on the field, you really are just kind of unsure. So I'm sure Kellen is dying to get all this over with and get to OTAs, get to some actual reps.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you're a coach. You want to coach football. You don't want it to be a desk job 12 months a year. But, we're really excited to begin the process of OTAs. Obviously, OTAs are structured in a way that it's more of a teaching, it's more of a build-up. And so I think we're just excited to begin the build. And, that'll start on April 14th. So.
Calvin, you worked with Kenny Pickett last year in Philly. What was the difference between the player you got when you first started working with him to the one you got by the Super Bowl?
Is this guy working for Kenny Pickett Illustrated? What? My man's My man's asking a Kenny Pickett question. What, like, I mean, seriously, unless he is running KennyPickett.com, the 24/7 blog spot for Kenny Pickett, like, if I'm Kellen Moore, I'm like, brother, how am I supposed to answer this question? I mean, the question is, what is the difference between the Kenny Pickett you got and then at the end of the year? Wow.
Yeah, transitions are huge for quarterbacks. Sometimes a fresh start can be very, very valuable. Kenny came to us, obviously going through an experience where he played a lot at Pittsburgh really early. We were really excited to get him, and I feel like his growth just took off as the season progressed. And you can certainly see the player that showed up in OTAs versus the player who played against Dallas late in the year. Very different player. The confidence was there. He played at a really high level.
What makes him? What still makes him a quality starter, and could make him a quality starter in this league?
Yeah. What still makes him a quality starter in this league? Hey, newsflash: Kenny Pickett sucks. There you go. Write that. There's your story. I'll write you the headline. Kenny Pickett, ass. Horrible. Not a starter in the league. Maybe a backup. But if you got to go to him, kind of in a bad spot. I'm very quick. You know, I trust my eyes when it comes to these players. I said it with Jake Haener last year. Dude sucks. Kenny Pickett, dude sucks.
Yeah, I think he's got a good arm. He's got a great kind of patience to him as far as his understanding of the game, his ability to process at a really high level. I think he's got some sneaky athleticism that allows him to make plays off schedule and out in space. And so he was very, very valuable to us to help us late in the year when Jalen wasn't available. Thanks. Yep.
Had a bet on that game. I think I had the Eagles. I want to say if you go back, I want to say the Eagles were like -3 or something like that in that spot. I think they were playing Washington. And I'm watching the game. Jalen's head bobbles off the ground. Tough way to spend a tough way to spend a Sunday afternoon.
Have you talked to Taysom at all? Do you know where he's at health-wise?
I mean, I've talked to Taysom, obviously. Obviously we feel he's going through his process, and you don't want to allow him to go through his process. He's going through the recovery phase of this thing and the rehab, and so Taysom's been a premier player in this league. We feel great about him, but let him kind of go through his stages of this, and we'll see where it goes.
After you guys redid the contract, there was still kind of like a weird, like, trade him, and they like, those are, I guess, maybe narratives, but like, what's just your perspective on that, where your guys' relationship is with Derek, and does he want to be here?
Yeah, no. Derek is obviously a really good quarterback in this league. We've again, I think, been pretty consistent as we've gone through this process. With the restructure, as far as just giving ourselves some flexibility from a roster standpoint. Derek, I'm excited to have him back with us really shortly. Obviously, April 14th will start, and I think that's the fun part. These guys go through the offseason. They have a chance to spend time with their family, invest in all that, which is the right thing to do. And once you get back April 14th, you kind of begin the process of football's in the fold, and it'll be a great process.
Do you get the sense that he's bought in, though, excited about what?
Yeah, we're excited to team up.
I don't know that we've ever asked you your scouting report on Spencer just after.
So before we get to the Spencer Rattler stuff, obviously the Derek Carr, questions and answers, you got to kind of read through a little bit because it's going to be very PR. It's going to be very, to the letter. I don't think anything Kellen said is surprising. I mean, he said they're happy to have him. They expect him back, like all that stuff. And yeah, right now they do. Right now, Derek Carr is the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr is the franchise quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. 10 days before trading Geno Smith, Clint Kubiak said Geno Smith is a big reason why he came to Seattle. The ownership group of Seattle said Geno Smith's our guy. 10 days later, traded him. So it's one of those things where it is until it isn't. I think right now, Derek Carr is the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints, and right now Derek Carr is expected to be starting week 1, for sure. But is it set in stone? Obviously not. There still is a lot that has to happen, and I've said this before, and it's nothing against Derek Carr. From a human perspective, I think it is weird how this is all played out, and I think it is going to be seen as weird from his teammates, and I think there is a weird fog over that position. Am I making it up? Does it actually exist? Who the hell knows? I'm just calling it like I see it. So, yeah, Derek Carr obviously is the starter, like right now. He is QB1. He is on the roster. He is on the depth chart. We don't have to sign a quarterback. We don't have to draft one. Like, we got Derek Carr, right? But I think it's foolish to not see what has happened and say, yeah, I mean, this is kind of not normal. Like, this is kind of a weird, awkward. It has been awkward. And I think not admitting that is weird. I really do. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's an indictment of Derek Carr if you admit that this whole thing has been kind of awkward. And it has. So when something has been awkward like this has, it does offer room for interpretation, and we'll see how it goes. You know, we will know come April, late April, we'll know exactly what's happening with this team at that position.
Yeah, really good player. Obviously, we went through the evaluation process last year when we were in Philadelphia, just watching him at South Carolina. Good player, tons of tools. Obviously, he played in some challenging circumstances, and I think that's an important context as we kind of evaluated it. You want to make sure he's going through the right process. Is he making good decisions? Is he going through his progressions? Is he hanging in the pocket? You saw a lot of those things. Results can be a little bit uncontrolled variables a little bit in his circumstances, and so we're excited to continue to build and develop him as he goes through his second offseason. I think that's always that second offseason for a lot of guys is a huge jump.
Yeah.
Your first year, you're just swimming. Any player.
Especially Spencer in that situation.
Right college season to training, draft. It's just like, holy cow, when is this thing going to slow down for me? And it doesn't through that whole first year for all these players. And then you get to that second offseason, it's like, okay, I've had a chance to breathe. I've gone through an offseason program. Now I'm in OTAs for the second time. I think there's huge jumps for those guys always.
Hey, spoiler. As of right now, Spencer Rattler is the backup quarterback. And the question is, like, which quarterback is going to lose out? Spoiler, Jake Haener. Like, I know I've said this a million times, but there is not a quarterback competition between Haener and Rattler. The conversation is Carr, Rattler, and then is there a third person going to get introduced through the draft or anything like that? Like, that's the question. But if everything stays the same, Carr is the starter, Rattler is the backup.
You said at the coaching clinic that you changed the language of the offense 4 times. Is that right?
Every place is different, yeah. Every circumstance is different, yeah.
And just like, what as a staff, what's the challenge for you guys, and why do you choose to do it that way? Because it seems like a lot of people,
Yeah, it really just depends on the circumstance. I've been in a couple places the last few years where there was some continuity, and I thought there was value to that. We'll build the system however we need to. The most important thing is kind of finding a common language. Once everyone speaks the same language, it's like going to a foreign country at times. You kind of got to get everyone on the same language, and then once you do, then everything just flows.
What's the challenge for you to have to be like bilingual or whatever? Like, a year ago it was one word, this year it's
Unfortunately, I've gotten bilingual in football languages, and so we've gone through the process a few times. In Dallas, we had a couple different systems. LA was a different system than Philly, and so and our offensive staff has kind of been exposed to a number of those. A couple guys that were in Dallas with me, LA, Philly. And so it's really just all of us coming together and saying, okay, this is how we're calling things, and this is the system we're going to create.
I think it does show you a lot of flexibility with Kellen, where, like, a lot of coaches may say, nah, I call this blank. I say this is this. It's always this. I'm staying the same words, same verbiage, whatever. Kellen's willingness to adapt to whatever situation he's in shows tremendous flexibility, but also shows smarts. Like, it shows the ability to do it. It's one thing to say you're going to do it, but to do it and to actually morph your language to fit another team's language and vice versa, like that is very impressive for Kellen.
That's what I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What's the philosophy behind that? Where did that come from? The idea to make it relatable things to the players and not just like pick one word and ride with it forever.
Yeah, I think it's just making the system connect with the players, and again, based off the situation you're in. When I went to LA, Justin had been through a lot of systems, so there was some potential for some continuity there. Philly, we wanted to keep a lot of language in place. Most of the staff, most of the players were already there, and so I was spending a little bit more time learning the language that was already created. And so we'll build it however we need to.
in New Orleans? Is it really a fourth language, or is it similar to one of the other three?
Yeah, we're leaning on one of the other ones. Yes.
Gotcha.
So.
How about Justin Reid's position? What does that do for the secondary?
Yeah, a premier player in our league, premier person in our league. We nailed it when we were able to get Justin. And so obviously you recognize there's a lot of other teams chasing after him, and so we feel really, really excited that ultimately he made the decision he wanted to come back to Louisiana. And we're just so fired up. You know, going into the Super Bowl, preparing to play the Chiefs. When I was in Philadelphia, watching him on film, he was one of the big impact players on that field, and so we felt great, you know, having the opportunity to team up with him.
Think about Justin Reid. When we got the signing, or when the news broke, we were celebrating. Right? We did videos on it. We were talking about it. A+, huge, premier player at a important position that we needed to fill. 3 years in his prime, like couldn't be a better deal. And now remember some of the feedback. Like remember some of the videos. And remember some of the stuff on subreddit or whatever of people reeing and crying their eyes out and losing sleep because the Saints signed Justin Reid. Why are they spending money? Why are they doing this on Justin Reid? Who's Justin Reid? Shouldn't they be doing something else with this money? Think about that. Now think about the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, Kellen Moore, who was the OC, all right, of the winning Super Bowl team, who was preparing against Justin Reid. And this guy's telling you he's a premier player, great player at the position, really hard to scheme against. He was someone we focused on in the Super Bowl to try and win the Super Bowl. It just shows you, the difference in perception. And, you know, it's easy for me to say because I was on the right side of this, but I would trust Kellen Moore when he says that Justin Reid is a premier player at the position, a premier player in the league, someone that they had to focus on. I would trust him way more than, Mickey Loomis sucks 847444 on subreddit or whoever else making rage bait videos, right? Like the Justin Reid, Justin Moore, combine both of them, that'd be a hell of a player. Justin Reid signing is an A+. And, you know, we talked about the Saints being underrated or the Saints roster being underrated or whatever. Just Justin Reid, just signing him makes the Saints better than they were last year. All right. And again, you get a guy in his prime for the next 3 years, absolutely locked down at a position. So, yeah, I love the Justin Reid signing. I cannot believe it wasn't heralded more. I mean, I can't believe it, but that was an A+ signing. And it's insane that it wasn't treated as such.
Tre'Davious Ward told reporters in Indianapolis that he was really close to signing with you guys. Was it an either-or situation with him? Did you guys, all right, we missed out on quarterback, let's go to safety, or was it potential to have both? How did you kind of...
Free agency has a lot of conversations in a very short period of time, and there's a lot of overlap, and so we felt like both of those players would have helped our team, and we had the flexibility to handle that however we needed to.
Yeah, just where do you feel like you guys stand, cap-wise, flexibility, after going through this process for the first time?
Yep. Yeah, Mickey and Kai do an excellent job of handling the salary cap, do an excellent job. I think we still got flexibility as we go through this whole offseason process, which is hugely valuable, and we'll just continue to have the flexibility to make the necessary changes, adjustments, moves that we need as we go through this.
Where do you feel like you guys are with your pass rush? Re-signed Chase Young, but you feel like you still need maybe something a little more there, or how do you feel?
There's a bunch of things you're always looking to improve. We feel like we got a good group there. Obviously, there's been investment previously and this offseason in the edge rushing department.
So it's obviously Carl and Chase.
If something's available as you go through the draft, through the offseason program, we'll continue to evaluate it.
What do you like about Dylan Radins?
Yeah, second-round pick. Obviously, you go back to everyone's evaluation of him coming out. Felt really good about him coming out. He's played a bunch of football in this league. Played in Tennessee, felt like he did a solid job there, and so we feel like it was a really valuable piece to put in our group, allow him to compete at a really high level with those guys, and we feel like we got a guy who certainly could start in this league and compete, nevertheless.
Yeah, good depth piece. I mean, I don't think he's much more than that. PFF grades were, we'll just call it average last year, maybe a little bit less than average at certain spots, but yeah, just a depth piece, which for a team that needs depth, totally fine.
He's played a lot of different positions in the offensive line. Just wanted to ask, is in contention for that starting left guard?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, brother, so am I. Like, everyone's in contention for the left guard spot.
Talking about draft evals over the years, do you have a favorite running back one that's really popped up that you've done in the pre-draft process?
It's a great question. I like the guy we had last year in Saquon. That was a good evaluation. I think Tony Pollard was a fun one. I think that was one that sticks out from Dallas because it was really a team effort of building the profile that allowed us to draft him because he really played receiver in college. We're projecting him back to running back where he played a little bit but not as much. And Will McClay, who's in Dallas, did an excellent job of kind of identifying him at the Senior Bowl, saying, hey, this guy, you're not going to see a lot of running back on film, but we really value him as a running back or returner. He played a little bit more running back at the Senior Bowl. We were able to evaluate him from that standpoint, brought him in, and I thought it was a really good example of the scouting department and the coaching staff kind of recognizing a player, building a viewpoint of how we see this guy fitting our roster, and he turned into a really good player.
Did you think that Saquon ever could have potentially had a shot at being 1-1? I know it's really hard for a running back. It has been 30 years.
It's a great question. Certainly, I think people are recognizing how valuable he is, and if that's what fits 1-1 in a particular draft, I don't think people are necessarily scared to do it.
Crazy question. Like, do you think Saquon could have been the first overall pick in the draft? I mean, brother, like, what's going on here?
I'm excited to work with Alvin Kamara, speaking of running back.
Yes. Alvin?
Yeah.
Premier player in our league. Obviously, you're really excited to have him on your side, Paul, on the other side. He's just a big play waiting to happen. Great person, great player, great teammate. He'll be a big part of our offense.
Alvin is in the perfect situation, I think. I mean, you got, like, Kellen Moore is going to run the entire offense through Alvin. Alvin is a premier player, and his skill set is exactly what someone like Kellen Moore would want. So I'm thrilled to see what Alvin's going to do. I was thrilled for him last year. I think Kubiak was using him fantastically. We would have seen Alvin's first 1,000-yard season if he doesn't get hurt. So, yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit for Alvin. He is absolutely a guy who could have a huge bounce-back year, burst through that 1,000-yard mark, which I'm sure he wants to. I'm sure he wants to get that done before his career is over. But, I can't wait to see what Kellen does with Alvin.
He's obviously getting older for that position. Do you worry about touches for him at all, or how do you sort of work that?
All running backs, as you go through the season, there's awareness to it's a longevity game. The season's very long. You understand every player is going to be different. He's been able to carry the ball a decent amount over the last couple of years, and we'll just kind of see as we go through the season how to evaluate that.
Do you remember your combine interview with Zach Taylor?
I do remember a little bit, yeah.
He talks about that all the time. What do you remember?
I remember we kind of drifted off probably where we shouldn't be, away from where the actual, in the room. We kind of drifted off. We just started talking about ball because Zach was one of the younger coaches in the room, and so he played college football recently, and so it was just fun conversation.
Did you know that was his first combine interview?
I remember him showing up and being a little bit like, I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do here. Yeah.
Decision on training camp? Where it's going to be in Metairie?
Yeah, it'll be in New Orleans. Metairie. It'll be in Louisiana, and so we're looking at some potential to, see if we can go somewhere else for a shorter period of time this year. But we'll spend some time in Louisiana, and the exposure to the heat and all that sort of stuff. We think there'll be value to it. Just getting accustomed to that, and training camp isn't supposed to be the easiest thing in the world, and so there will be some challenges with the heat, but that'll be a good thing for our team.
I'm surprised that most, I guess the facilities are a question, not in Metairie, but I'm surprised more teams don't do training camp in like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. Because if you grew up in the Gulf South, it is hell. Like, to practice in the summer or in 98% humidity, 115 degree heat index, like, to practice in that is absolutely brutal. To do anything in that is absolutely brutal. And, training camp is supposed to be an isolated situation. I'm really surprised that some teams don't build out a facility in, Dothan or Enterprise, Alabama, or Tylertown, Mississippi, or Prentice, Mississippi, or, Bogachita, or just random Mount Olive, like just random places, Lumberton, random spots in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. Build out your facility, do your training camp there in the elements, away from everything. I feel like that would be like really beneficial for teams and players and whatnot.
Sort of joint practices.
Yep, potentially joint practice. We'll navigate that as we go.
Not a questioning statement. Thank you.
What's kind of stood out about the staff that you have? You had some people that you knew, obviously, and some of them caught it. Kind of new impression.
I thought it's been a really fun staff just to get to know, because obviously doing it late in the process, it was kind of a fast process just to get the group together, and then just spending time. We've done a few things just to spend time together as a staff, and feel like it's a really, really good group, A-plus people, guys that come from different experiences and exposures, and I think that's hugely valuable when you team up in a situation like this, where we can all kind of lean on our different experiences and combine it to create, one really, really good vision for this team.
What's your philosophy in the draft? Like, if you guys have a need you really want to address, but maybe there's a slightly better player, how do you weigh future needs versus current needs and player value?
Yeah, obviously you want to get the best players you can. I think that's
True.
the first and foremost
BPA, baby.
aspect of it, is don't pass up really good players just to fit a certain specific position.
What a shock. Me and Kellen Moore are seeing things eye to eye, like the Goofy movie. Seeing things eye to eye. Again, yeah, you don't want to pass up really good players over and over to fill needs. Get the best players, fill your roster with good players, and good things will work out. That is the Philadelphia Eagles that is exactly how they've been good, is get a bunch of good players and see what happens. Oh, you already have a good defensive line? Yeah, well, Jalen Carter's available. Get him in. But you need a third cornerback. Shut your mouth. We're getting Jalen Carter.
Position when they are in the same tier, on the same level, obviously you're going to lean into players that you feel like can get on the field early, can help you in a really critical position, and so you're balancing those two. I think everyone will probably say similar things. I think that's hugely valuable, and we're excited to go through the process here in the next 2 weeks to kind of start building that board.
Last year it was very obvious you guys needed a tackle. Does this year feel a little bit more open of where you could go in
Hell yeah.
round one? I know that's player available, but when you guys are projecting your needs.
Yeah, I think it'll be a fun process just to go through the potential situations that could play out, and fortunate for us, we got a couple third rounds, a couple fourth rounds. We got some flexibility in this draft, I think, to do a number of things and bring really valuable players onto our team that can help us contribute this year.
How do you feel about trading up? You have a GM who likes to do that.
Mickey likes to trade up, so I've seen the numbers. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
You were just talking about success with Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara and things like that. It brings to question the idea of positional value and everything. What are your thoughts on that in terms of this position shouldn't be drafted this highly and things like that?
I think that's dumb as hell. I think this position shouldn't be drafted. I think that's comparable with hospital balls and just other words that are created by non-ball knowers to act like they know ball. But saying you can't take a tight end in the top 5 or a guard in the top 10 or a safety in the top, these fictitious rules make no sense at all. So I don't believe it whatsoever. Obviously, besides punter and kicker and whatnot. But if you believe you can get an all-pro, get them.
I think it's really on guys who impact the game. I think skill position guys, sometimes we get stuck with running back, fullback, receiver, maybe a slot only or an outside, or maybe only a tight end. Kind of the skill position group I kind of sometimes lump together. You just want impact players, and that's where you have the flexibility in the scheme to play with whatever best suits you. And I think it's, hey, I'd love to be an 11 personnel guy. That's kind of been my background. But you have 2 premier tight ends, you're going to play in 12 personnel. You have 2 premier running backs, you're going to play with both those guys on the field. You got to have the flexibility to handle that.
Genius.
Depending on how the off seasons play out, the draft, the free agency. You don't want to pass up on good players just because they can't quite fit what you currently do. And so, I think, especially on the defensive side, I think we got a very similar reflection with Brandin. With Phil and special teams, I think we got some great flexibility within our schemes to suit ourselves however we need to.
In that same school of thought, there's these thought processes of like the team isn't ready for a quarterback, or the running back, you shouldn't get him until the line's there, and then he can be like a force multiplier. Like, where do you fall on that? Do you have to have it built, or do you just get the players and then figure it out? Or
I think what would answer this question for a lot of people is if you added a player into the sentence. So if you went to like the extremes, but you said, well, you don't want to draft Jahmyr Gibbs because you already have a starting running back. Like, that sounds insane, right? Like, well, you don't want to draft Patrick Mahomes, you have Alex Smith. Like, stuff like that. Like, once you put the player in the equation, it changes everything. You know, you can obviously scale down dependent on, you know, how good the players are and stuff like that. But, you know, the pick is so mystifying. Like, the pick is just so opaque. It's just kind of whatever. Whereas if you throw a player in there, it makes people think like, okay, well, yeah, obviously I would draft that player. Like, yeah, obviously I wouldn't pass on Jahmyr Gibbs just because I had a running back. Or I wouldn't pass on Patrick Mahomes because I have a 31-year-old quarterback. You know, I wouldn't pass on Malik Neighbors because I have whatever wide receiver. And like I said, you can keep Puka Nacua. It's like, well, you don't want to draft Puka Nacua. You know, you already have two receivers. It's like, brother, I'll figure it out. Give me Puka Nacua. That's if you do it that way, it's pretty obvious that you just go back to, yeah, get the best players. Get good players. I don't care who you have on the team. Like, just keep getting good players and keep getting, you know, impact players. And it's up to the coaches to find a way to get them on the field.
I do think you want to build the best roster for, you know, you're building kind of an ecosystem, so to speak, you know, for certain players. And so I do think the offensive line, defensive line are critical. That's a very valuable piece. You know, you win and control a lot of the games with how you handle the offense and defensive lines. Been around that for a long time with Dallas and Philly, where that's been a huge aspect of our success in both those spots. And so, you know, you'll continue to build it however you need to.
How do you feel about defensive tackle? You guys traded for Gosh, but also brought back Saunders.
Yep. Feel like we're in a good place. You know, Jonah Williams in there as well, who can play some more of that inside, you know, inside defensive line positions. And so we feel like we got some good depth there, some guys who play some football. They understand it. They can play at a high level. And, you know, as we go through this process, we'll see how the draft plays itself out.
Similarly, how would you...
Gave us 2 or 3 more
Yeah.
Thank you. Similarly, how would you assess sort of the linebacker room behind Demario Davis and Peter?
Yeah, fairly young group, a group that we're excited to continue to develop. Again, similar situation. We feel like we got some guys in there who can develop into players that can play on the field at a high level. But as this thing goes through, if we add a piece, awesome.
Is it something that you all pay attention to? I mean, you have over 100 starts for Demario, 40 starts for Pete Werner, and then you've got this big drop-off in terms of starting opportunities. How much does that matter versus the potential that those younger guys have?
Yeah, I mean, those two are really good players. There's a reason those other guys haven't started games because we have 2 really good linebackers that play a lot of snaps. And so we feel great about those two. Obviously, the younger guys, they're developing. We feel like there's some developmental pieces there that will be valuable to our team.
How do you feel like this quarterback class is in general?
Yeah, it's a good class. Good class. Obviously, I think different skill sets. I think that's the important aspect of it, is kind of identifying stylistically how all of them play and what best suits them.
And a lot of like quarterbacks coming out now have more starts because of NIL.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that experience kind of pay off? Like, are quarterbacks becoming a little more ready?
Yeah, hugely valuable.
Yeah, that's been a good boom for NIL, is that it keeps quarterbacks in college. So quarterbacks do get so much more experience because there is a huge benefit to playing. So by the time a quarterback gets to the pros, I mean, I remember quarterbacks used to get drafted with 15 starts, 16, 17 starts in college. And it's like, man, I don't really know what this guy's got. I know he had a good season. No, he had a good season and a half, but I don't really know. But now you're seeing quarterbacks with 3 years starting experience, 4 years starting experience for some. So there is a ton of value from a scouting side to see these guys getting a tremendous amount of reps.
You kind of go back to the Bill Parcells philosophy of, guys that have played a couple years of football and college football, just the experience and exposure. And I think at the same time, Bo Nix, I think, was a great example. Yeah. Older guy, but he's played a lot of football. Quarterbacks aren't maturing and peaking necessarily until they're in their early 30s, a lot of these guys. And so they're continuing.
Yeah, people make a big deal about age and I think age is important for certain positions, but quarterback is not one of them. Quarterback, you get guys who play late into their 30s, So if a quarterback is 25 versus 23, does it really matter? No, right? Like, so age is important when it comes to certain positions, but I don't think quarterbacks should be graded under the same scale when you're looking at prospects.
Seeing the build, they got a long career if they have success, and you've seen that a lot throughout this league.
Super quick, any update on Boston Rowe's kind of recovery process?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you see him, it makes your day better. Foster's awesome. Certainly he's going through his process. You feel like he's heading in the right direction, and I think the biggest thing is let the recovery and rehab process just take care of itself. We're not going to rush to judgment and all that sort of stuff, but we're excited whenever he comes back. Okay.
Dallas is the language you're basing
No, won't be Dallas. A little bit, a few of them.
Which one?
It's like a little bit of a combination, you know? Steal a little bit here, steal a little bit here. Yeah. I'm leaning towards one.
Is it a really recent?
Thanks, Kellen.
What a guy. I love him. I mean, I think Kellen, like, I don't think he said anything that was really groundbreaking. I don't think anything should have surprised anybody. There's not like a, you know, I don't think he said anything that's like, oh my God, that's really changes how I think about whatever. But every time I've heard Kellen talk, I think it's pretty obvious that he is very smart, very analytical. I think he's thinking about this at a high level. I think he's fully invested as far as like like I said, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's in the facilities 20 hours a day, obsessing over this job. I still do not see a world where Kellen Moore fails as a head coach. When you got a guy who is as experienced as he is with previous success, he's as smart as he is, I just don't see him failing. I would be stunned, flabbergasted, if come week 3, I'm sitting here saying Kellen Moore screwed this up by not calling a timeout. Kellen Moore should have went for 2 here. Kellen Moore didn't know the numbers here. Like, I just cannot see that happening. And there's a possibility it does, but I would just be blown away if Kellen cannot get this right. I think the Saints are in great hands. I mean, going from Dennis Allen to Kellen Moore is going from, it's like getting your first computer where everything's at your fingertips. Like, you went from nothing to the highest possible technology. I couldn't be more excited for the Saints. I think they are in the right hands. I mean, this is a lot on Kellen Moore, but I think Kellen Moore is a lot closer to Sean Payton than what we saw the last 4-ish years. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Kellen Moore is. I'll end you with this. Because I'm, why not, right? Hour plus into the video. I'm putting myself out here with this one because I really haven't thought about this past right now. I think when it's all said and done, you can clip this, put it on Reddit, whatever, screenshot it, put it in your wallet. I think when it's all said and done, Kellen Moore will be the greatest coach in New Orleans Saints history. I think he will be a better coach than Sean Payton. That is big nuts, but sometimes you got to do it. So you heard it here first. That's what I think about Kellen Moore. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think you're looking at who will be the greatest coach in New Orleans Saints history. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. If you made it to the end, put it down in the comments below. You are a hero if you did. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I will see you in the next video.